Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, happy Monday. We get to do a new division today. These have been as much fun as I remembered and hoped over the years. And we move on to one of the more popular divisions in the sport. Drives ratings, at least. Not one I'm super excited to watch personally, but it's the NFC East.
Yeah, this is and Dan.
Almost got it this time.
I will. Close. We were close. Yeah, the NFC East. I mean, it was a punchline the other year. It's had some weird, just like weird outcomes over the years because you've had some outlier teams like the Eagles Super Bowl, and not to take anything away from that what that team did, but like just kind of came out of nowhere and then fell off immediately again. And you know, even the Giants Super Bowls, you have to go back a longer ways for some of those. Those are just weird seasons. Obviously, the Cowboys Super Bowls, we have to go back to like VHS kind of times, but they have had some teams that have had super high expectations and have fallen super, super short. Like, and a lot of time, and to be fair, there's been some major injuries. There's been a lot of problems, you know, over the years with the quarterback position for them. Just it seems like they always have the answer, and then it just never quite works out. And then Washington has just been an utter fucking pit of despair for a long time. I don't think they've had a playoff win for like 15 years. I don't know. It's rough. At least there hasn't been any, you know, controversy to go along with the poor performance on the field. It's a whole thing up there. Like they got the whole package. The team doesn't do anything well, and then on top of that, you have issues with the management, the ownership, the coaches tweeting about the insurrection. Like come on, guys, let's just get it together for a little bit. We've got a new name, we've got a new attitude. Let's do something up there in Raljan. But our thing, I think we are starting with the New York Football Giants today. And
Gigantes.
as we always do, we'll start by recapping their season. And I had forgotten how many games Daniel Jones had missed. So, like, again,
oh yeah, definitely not on the front of my mind.
Sorry, Lipscomb. Yeah, imagine being a fan. I know, and that's how you can tell that. I mean, they have a strong fan base somehow. That's how entrenched they are in the community. I mean, it was a powerhouse in the late 80s, going back again, talking Washington. Like, that was an amazing run they had. They won, 3 Super Bowls with 3 different QBs. And I mean, where's Gibb rank? Top 10 head coach ever? I mean, just doing what he did.
You're talking
15.
about Bill Parcells?
No, Gibbs.
You're on Washington.
I know. Lipscomb brought up being a fan of Washington. I'm sorry. I bounced back.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm putting Bill Parcells there too. I'm putting them both top 10 coaches. Either way, we will go.
Yeah, that's. I'll give Gibbs top 20 surely, and Parcells top 10.
Yeah. McAdoo, Judge.
Not top 10 for me.
Yeah, like not even top 10 Giants coaches. This team's been around long enough where I think I can say that. It's the end of another era. I think they've done this 3 times in a row now. Or it's been
end of an error.
2 years of a coach.
Was that a Freudian slip?
No, that's like a thing people say. So yeah, they've gotten rid of a coach after 2 years, 3 times in a row now. It's been kind of a run rate for them. They hopefully have their guy. But yeah, it's 4-13. Daniel Jones played like 10 games, I believe, out of the season. Your backups and other quarterbacks who were playing during those games. Oh God, it was. Where do I have it here? I had to like look up. I guess I didn't even write it down. Jesus, guys, but it was bad. You didn't have good depth at spots. You had a lot of injuries. You had your rookie quarterback, your rookie wide receiver that didn't have a ton of success. You have a high investment running back who has suffered 3. He hasn't had like the catastrophic I'm missing 18 months yet, waiting for that one to come. But he's had 3 decent injuries already. Just haven't had a lot of things go right. And, now we're fresh slate. And I guess without getting to like who's taking over here, I want you to rate this as far as we said the cupboard was bare in Chicago. No pun intended, bare. So let's put the Chicago cupboard at a 1 out of 10. Let's put the Minnesota cupboard, because that is 2 other teams who replaced the head coach and the GM in the offseason. Minnesota cupboard, can we put it at an 8 as far as talent left on the roster?
I'll give you 7.
Well, I want a 10 to be like, this is a team that's replacing a head coach and a GM. Like we need to use that as reference. Like they're probably an 8 or a 9, honestly, if you're using that as a kind of a measuring stick. Because great teams don't replace the head coach and the GM usually. So
you're right.
Minnesota was high on that. Where would you put this Giants team as of last year where they left them?
A lot of draft capital.
Mm-hmm.
You have an open book about what to do with the quarterback position. Those are 2 positives if you're taking over a franchise like this. Negatives are you're the player with the highest approximate value on your team last year was Leonard Williams on the D line. That's not good. Yeah, I think this is a 4 for me. But from a talent alone, you're like 2 or 3.
Yeah, that's probably a fair ranking, and it is tough too. Like they left again. Once we get into the actual house cleaning, the cap space wasn't great. That's why you saw some of the things that had to happen. But I don't know any takeaways from what you saw in the field. I mean, I'm assuming you're fine with the judge firing, the moving on. Yeah. Like we're not doing this anymore. Then I guess, do you believe it was Gettleman retiring, or was it like we're done with you? Do you want to retire?
I don't know. Nothing about the Gettleman regime really made sense from like how you build a competitive football in today's day and age at all. And I think a lot of the fact that they didn't really put pressure on him to perform the roles and responsibilities of general manager to a higher level speaks to just not really having a ton of confidence in the ownership side of the things here, that this is ultimately going to work out. I think if your owners are letting your GM run amok in the way that they let Gettleman run, and then, let them fire a couple of head coach, fire and hire a couple of head coaches and make some really questionable choices in doing so, it's tough to figure out exactly how the organization overall bounces back, because ownership matters not as much as coaching and GM, obviously, but not as much as coach and quarterback, obviously, but certainly non-zero. And, I don't know that you have a very stable, strong, voice in the room when it comes to the direction of the franchise. I thought Joe Judge was a horrific mistake from the get-go. And while that kind of act, that tough guy act that can galvanize players positively in the context of what Dan Campbell has done with the Lions, it never felt like it had a shot of working with the Giants, just because of the approach itself was too abrasive and or too much stick and no carrot. Kind of like how Urban Meyer lost the locker room in a matter of a couple of weeks. These guys are professionals. They don't want to be treated that way. And, I think in general, you didn't feel great about the Joe Judge hire in a vacuum. And then when the quotes you read and the way you hear about how camp is being run, it goes downhill even faster. The other, kind of most of the issues, like with Chicago, most of the other issues were the way the roster was managed by Gettleman, in my opinion. He is sort of the responsible party for the dissolution. Whether he retired or was fired doesn't really matter. But it's still a division that you see lots of quick turnarounds. There's plenty of last place to first place examples in the NFC East because the margin between these teams is just not that great because there's really no great team for whatever reason, right?
Yeah,
All
I
the
think
owners have
when
a
you
little bit of
see,
a weird proclivity to them.
and there's going to be lots and lots and lots of love for the Eagles, and we'll get to that when we get to them on Wednesday, and we'll try to maybe tamp that down a little because I don't like to give too much love to anyone, but it is a division where if you can put enough silver linings or make enough cases for steps forward or things that should regress from last year, you can make a case for anyone to win this division, I think, if you really
Yeah,
want
sure.
to. I don't know if I really can for either of the teams today. I will talk about like some ceilings I think that they could hit if things go right. I don't know if either of those is really a division winning ceiling. In the NFC, you know, if one of these teams really surprises, there's definitely chances for wild card teams for everybody. I think everybody in
Yeah.
this division has a chance to playoffs if things go right. There's no like, oh no, this is, you know, this is an utter disaster. This team just completely devoid of talent. They're going to win 4 games. It's not that. They just,
So
you know, look. I mean, it's the season win totals are seven and a
I'm
half,
gonna
8.
push back on
Well, no,
this.
I mean there are wide distributions for probably both of the teams today. Like there are utter disasters on the block for sure. I'm just saying there are some teams where their ceiling doesn't get too far out of the, you know, hey, you're drafting in the top 5 range.
That's fair. That's totally fair. I will say my case, my view, independent of the Giants, my view of the NFC East is that it is wide open. I'm not going to make a case for the Giants or the Commanders today, but I don't think that their chances are as low as the market has it currently priced. And I think one team is making the playoffs out of this, even though the NFC East gets to go up against the NFC South, which means you get a lot of games against the Falcons, a lot of games against the Panthers. The problem is the AFC West is on your schedule. What is the collective number of wins that the NFC East gets over the AFC West, Andy?
That was last year.
Oh, that was last year? Oh, you're
Yeah, they
right.
actually have that. I was gonna say I was
Oh,
gonna push back on
good
schedule. I'm like
call. I'm
this
looking at
whole
2021.
yeah, this whole division actually has like the AFC South
Oh,
and the
actually,
NFC and
great
the
point.
NFC North. So like the theme, and it's funny when we get rolling on these, it's like, hey, just like the last team we talked about, their schedule is hard or easy because they play the same divisions. And yeah, they do have easy schedules. All of these teams are going to have, well, on paper right now where we sit in June, July, wherever we're at, there's easiest schedules, but you never know what's going to happen. There are a lot of teams on here that not only easy schedules, but maybe teams I'm not super high on compared to the market even. So I get it. Like I get some of the love for these teams, and I guess let's bounce to the biggest reason.
Damn, you're
And
right. So
all
last
right,
year
so
they had the second toughest schedule. This
it
year they
was
have
it
the
was
third
crazy.
easiest.
It was crazy tough, and then they had a lot of injuries. And another thing holding them back for 11 weeks there was having a completely uncreative, is uncreative a word? A person who lacks creativity in the offense with Jason Garrett, and then they replaced him with the interim offensive coordinator. Biggest fall from grace in the last 5 years, Freddie Kitchens, who was, my God, he was a big name a few years ago. This was Freddie Kitchens was going to fix things for everybody. But yeah, the play calling combined with the injuries, combined with the tough schedule, combined with the injuries that happened at really important skill positions, and then not being able to evaluate Daniel Jones, that sucks. In this new regime, like you said, they get put in a weird spot and they don't really know what they have in a quarterback. They didn't take his option. So he can just walk unless they want to tag him after the season and pay extra, which is apparently a risk they're willing to take coming into this. And again, it's the new regime. They didn't draft him. So I guess maybe they're fine with that. But yeah, the offense, maybe even without the injuries, was kind of doomed when you face that schedule with Coach Garrett. Like that's kind of a recipe for disaster. So I get the house cleaning. How excited are you for the let's go get two guys from the same organization? Do you think that matters at all? Like, is that a decision that comes into play? Like, hey, we could probably get Shane and Dable, and they could both come over from Buffalo. Like, do you think that matters, or it's just like, hey, they're both available, happens to be from the same team, we're fine with it?
I vote positive on that as far as a vision goes. If you're hiring a general manager and coach in the same cycle, getting two guys that have at a minimum a professional relationship and at best kind of a common vision is pretty important. If you have two guys that are forced to work together for various reasons, and or two guys that it seems like a good marriage and the interview went well, and this is a guy we really covet, and we're just going to make it work with the general manager, then if things go wrong early, the dissolution there turns nasty pretty quickly, a la Pace and Nagy kind of a deal. So I think, yeah, ultimately it's I don't know that there's tons of examples, but we're going to find out this year for sure. The Las Vegas Raiders did this too. They took two Patriots. And I think, yeah, I co-sign as far as conceptually. And I thought Dable was pretty obviously the best coaching candidate among all the assistants last year, and the Giants got him. So good on them for that.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I don't know much about assistant GMs. Like, it's hard to say, hey, this is one of my 5 favorite assistant GMs, because again, it's hard to tell. Like, was he the one doing heavy lifting? What was he doing? Or was it just the GM was so good and he rode coattails? Like, hard to tell. But yeah, Dable, happy with him. And again, maybe you can make the same case for that. Like, who made who? Did Dable make Allen? Did Allen make Dable? We did this with Eberflus. We said, did he really just turn, Leonard Floyd, dear God, Darius Leonard into some stud immediately and turn that defense around, or did just luck into a really good situation? It's very hard to tell with so many factors, but I think I like Dable just based on the offense he ran, like kind of a pass first offense. And again, I like to do this. And again, you guys read the same shit as me. You guys, a lot of you I know have mentioned this in the Deep Dive Discord. You read the Football Outsiders chapter before we do a podcast. It's a super good idea. Gets yourself in the mind state. I read that too. I take a look at Cleve's thing. I look at some other stuff, but I love reading the beat reporters, especially once we get deeper into this. It gets better and better as we actually get into some camps, when they get some quotes from players or quotes from some of these coaches. And I mean, we all know what Buffalo's offense was, and obviously it's way different than a Jason Garrett offense. But right away, I mean, everything around this is they're talking about, hey, guess what? We're implementing a modern pass first offense that marries elements of the Bills and Chiefs offenses adjusted for the Giants' talents. That last part really stuck with me. Like, the whole square peg round hole thing where he said a lot of teams would have screwed up Lamar Jackson by not using him right. This is, if you can take the Bills and the Chiefs offenses, you're not going to run the Chiefs offense with Daniel Dimes. If you can take elements of the Chiefs and the Bills offenses and adjust it to what you think the strengths of your teams are, that sounds pretty good to me. So I'm kind of on board with this offense doing well under the new coaching staff. I can buy into some of that if we see some healthiness. And I think it is just it can't get worse. Like, they were super injured. They played a hard schedule, and they had 2 brain dead offensive coordinators last year. Like, how could it possibly worse? So, like, by attrition, I think this offense might be watchable at times.
No, I think that's a completely fair point. Addition by subtraction when it comes to the way that the scheme and sequencing went last year, for sure. I think expectations were rightfully low on the Giants last year because they went into the season with Joe Judge as a beleaguered coach and Garrett as the offensive mind in a time where that was not likely to work. And Dable and Kafka on paper looks pretty sick, I gotta say.
Yeah, I
Like
think
that's
you might see
pretty ideal.
with Kafka in there instead of Garrett, you might see this offense go through a metamorphosis.
Oh, Andy, my
That
goodness.
that one,
Only
that
the
one.
only the English majors are getting that one.
I had that
Um,
one. I had that one in the holster,
yeah,
ready to
that
go.
one in the
But no,
holster.
I'm excited about what I've
No,
heard from
yeah,
Kafka. I'm excited those two minds working together. And
surely.
then yeah, like just again, it was a full cleaning house. If we're talking this, Wink Martindale's been around, and some coaches
True.
see the league pass them by a little. I don't think he's of that nature, and I
Mm,
think he still gets it. I'm excited to see that part of it too. We'll talk more about the defense, but again, I think you upgraded at the three major coaching positions from where you were last year. And what we see from the defense could be fun too if that pass rush is kind of all together, especially considering how aggressive he wants to be with pass rush. And during his career, seemingly despite how bad other parts of the defense are, it doesn't matter. He'll put some corners on an island, even if they're not ready for it, just in favor of I'm still going to be aggressive. So I'm happy with all three coaching hires, and I think that the biggest question mark still is you've got a quarterback you didn't give the option on, and I mean he knows it. He's got to be fully bought in, I suppose. Like he has to, not to say the players don't give their all, but boy, if there wasn't, there's not many better times for you to really, really study up. Maybe they needed to put the homework clause in his contract too here. Study up and make sure you know this offense and make a case for yourself, at least to catch on elsewhere. Because I suppose like if this team does poor, it's a quarterback rich draft class. And if they had a high pick and they have the war chest to move up, if they don't, if they need to go up a little higher to get the guy they want, like Jones is out pretty quick. Like his lease has to be short, at least after the season goes.
It's really tough with Jones.
I don't know. I don't know what to
Number.
think of him.
I don't have a good number, and that like you brought up that point about how much he missed last year. I did not watch enough Giants games to tell you that off the top of my head. That's for sure. He only you had Jake Fromm starting games last
Yeah,
year.
Glennon and Fromm. I
Glennon and
couldn't
Fromm?
remember the
Wow.
quarterbacks that played.
Man.
Fromm is not good. Glennon
Mm-mm.
is fine as a backup, but you don't want him out there for multiple games. And
Yeah.
what I mean, one more thing about, and I know a lot of this was improvisation. Boy, I don't know if I said that word quite right. It felt
Improvisation, yeah.
Improvisation on
Yeah.
Josh Allen's part, but they seemed fine with letting him tuck the ball and run. And I think Daniel Jones is pretty good with the ball in his hands running. And if he's healthy and we see an offense that opens him up to do more of that, or, called quarterback runs, the offensive line probably is going to take a little step forward too. So maybe we see a little more running at the right times, because
there's one problem though. He gets hurt.
He does. He's injury prone.
And putting him in harm's way is going to potentially accelerate the end of the Daniel Jones era. His backup this year is Tyrod Taylor, so presumably your backup starting minutes are higher quality than what you got last year, but still not high enough quality that it makes you any kind of a contender. Yeah, the Daniel Jones experience is a really, really, really tough one, because in a vacuum, he is still young enough and he is inexperienced enough that in the right system and with the right coaches and play calling, he should be able to succeed at the NFL level, considering the accuracy with which he places the deep ball. That's a good weapon to have in your arsenal, being able to do that, and he can do it. The problem was, I think, we don't really know the degree which he can run an offense in the way Josh Allen does. Certainly, Daboll's offense in particular, we just don't know if that's possible. But I don't think, if this team surprises to the good offensively out of the gate against the likes of the Titans, Panthers, and Cowboys, we're probably not really going to be surprised, right?
No, again, they lost so many games to injury at the skill positions, and they added pieces. Andrew Thomas is coming along nicely. If you have a starting quarterback that plays well, like it should just be a better team. You have good receivers, I think. I wasn't a big Tony guy, but a lot of it was just I don't like that offense. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
down on Kadarius. I was a little. I know I like Trask made him look better than he probably was at times because that guy was just getting. No, I not. Excuse me, not Trask. Pitts. I don't mean Trask. I did
Pitts.
not
Okay.
mean.
Yeah.
No, 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 no. Pitts drawing like three
Okay.
defenders,
Like
and then
Pitts' gravity. Yeah.
Pitts
Helped
was
him.
taking all the defenders, and he did make him look better at times. That said, he's still good. We saw some flashes of him play well, and I just wasn't excited for him because I thought he was a little overrated, and he was going to a bad offensive system where things weren't going to go well. So Galladay, Tony, Saquon, if we're all healthy, and I do want to address the Saquon thing because I feel like we're hard on him in general. And I think we need to separate that out a little. We need to split our brains a little on that. I'm hard on him and I'm negative because he was just such a shitty draft pick at that spot.
Sure.
That said, if you can separate that part and you don't consider, because you can't go back and do anything about that. He's on your team. If you're the manager, if you're Shane, if you're the coach, the offensive coordinator, he's on your team now and he's good. If he's healthy, he's still good. Especially if you have a smart offense who calls runs at the right time rather than just having him dive into 8 and 9 man boxes. Yeah. And then after he hurt his ankle, I mean, he was not even as effective as his backups. He could tell he was hampered. He wasn't as good. So if all that stuff works out, your receivers are healthy, your offensive line is where it's supposed to be, and he's healthy, Daniel Jones can play Kirk Cousin ball. Like, just be good enough. Don't lose games for us. Yeah. And this team will have enough offensive firepower to compete, because I think this offense is going to just look a lot differently based on what the coaches are going to call. So I'm cautiously optimistic for the Giants offense. I still am worried. And again, this might be an over team for me. If we're going to go like all this, I almost said it's not going to be like zero blitzes sometimes, but if we're going to do some heavy blitzing and have question marks in the secondary, like it could be fun games to watch at least. Like if this offense is, humming along a little and the secondary stinks, maybe from just a pure watching football standpoint, that's my favorite kind of team to watch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Give me some arena ball.
You know who they're, what you circle over games? Anyone with any pulse in the explosive play department. If you have any kind of offense that has a high rate of explosive plays, that kind of team is scoring 30 on these guys. In general, Wink Martindale, fine guy to bring in with this regime and kind of help him really try to right the ship defensively. But I thought the guy that they lost in Patrick Graham was, I held him in higher regard for today's NFL and what he does creatively as far as crafting defense. And so this could be a downgrade defensively. Downgrade defensively from a personnel standpoint, surely. Losing James Bradbury because of cap issues is just, that's the worst kind of way to denigrate your roster.
It just felt so bad, and you had to know that, like when Shane came in and he knew, like, that had to be top of the list. Like he makes too much. Terrible. Well, yeah, somebody mentioned that, and they paid Tyrod. Yeah, he's a quarterback. Tyrod makes they gave him like $11 million. You have to. He's a quarterback. Even backups make good money. So yeah, they had to clear Bradbury. They had to get rid of Booker. There was one other one that was like a decent size Logan Ryan.
So Evan Ingram gone. Your tight end is now a huge hole. Yeah.
You lose 2 pieces of your secondary. You lose a couple pieces off your offense that played a decent role into things. Like, it sucks to start your regime that way, but like, he knew what he was in for, and hopefully ownership did too. Like, they did start in cap hell. So, a lot of the additions were just cheap. And he even said this in a press conference, like, this is a team that's going to compete this year. Like, he kept the expectations in a good spot. We're going to compete next year to be like good, or compete this year and be good next year, because you can't go on a spending spree when you are coming in flat broke to begin with. So, and I touch on Graham too. We'll get to him eventually. I think he landed in a nice spot in Vegas.
Yeah, he's in.
I kind of like that the mix of coaches they have there as well.
Yeah. The problems. Okay, so last year the Giants were an easy pass because you looked at some of the parts on offense and you just knew that with Daniel Jones, the questions of the offensive line, questions with the way the plays were called and coordination, like there was just too many what ifs that were to downside. That's kind of the way this defense is this year, right? Too many what ifs with downside. Nickelback problem. CB2 problem. Safety play problem. Xavier McKinney's going to have to take a huge step forward for you to get above league average safety play between your two safeties. Pass rush, pretty weak. You went out and got Kayvon Thibodeau. If Thibodeau does not give you a full 17-game season, which is entirely possible considering his youth and just in general his availability to stay on the field, you're going to have games where you're generating a pass rush is going to be very, very challenging. Not great tackling, not great run stop. Leonard Williams is a monster. He's your best player, though. That's not great. I think realistically, this is going to be probably pretty likely bottom 5 defense.
I don't hate the pass rush if everybody plays and stays healthy. Like Ojulari was fine. Thibodeau, again, you have an unknown. He's rookie. He has to, like, if he steps in and does well with this pass rush, and again, if it's an aggressive one where he's just able to blitz and run after the quarterback, maybe he does fine. I still think I like him better than Hutch, even though we bet Hutch to win an award over him. Dexter Lawrence is fine. Leonard Williams, like you said, is good. Like the front 5-7, like it can be above average, but it is dependent on a rookie playing well, Ojulari playing as well as he did last year, Dexter Lawrence not continuing to maybe take many steps back, and then also at the same time carrying what probably is going to be a bad secondary. And you see that in, it's a team game. You can have a lot of good pieces up front and teams who can figure things out as far as just getting, hey, let's get the ball away quick. Their pass rush is actually coming together. Maybe we take a lot of 3-step drops and it won't matter because Adoree Jackson has to step in and be your top guy. And he's just not
possible, though.
He's not, he's not 100% guaranteed to just, hey, guess what? I'm a top corner in the league now. And then, like you said, if he is, I'll just throw away from him, I guess. Blake Martinez coming off injury. That was kind of a nasty one. Like some things have to happen. Like you said, McKinney has to take a step forward. Adoree Jackson has to be the guy. And you have to have some other things happen. I don't think the secondary has a chance to be good. The linebackers, at least from the interior, are question mark. The pass rush is probably your highest chance of being good on the defense. And it still has, the question marks of, hey, we drafted this guy. Well, doesn't automatically mean he's going to come in and get 8 sacks. Be awful nice if you're a Giants fan, but there is and someone mentions in the chat, Johnny C, he's been active in the chat this summer. Says another team starting a rookie at cornerback. Yeah, that's
not great.
Usually not going all that well. So, and it's funny too, like, hey, one of our biggest rivals got our lockdown corner, which sucks because that means we can't cover high-end wide receivers anymore. But they also got AJ Brown. So when they come to town, like they have a high-end wide receiver to go against, Adoree. It's going to be trying for that secondary at times. So
sure.
Maybe that's where I'm overall neutral on this team.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at.
I have them below league average. Not much.
I'm a little higher than them on market because the market right now power rates them as the 27th best offense, and I think that's too low. This is a league average set of skill position players. The only glaring hole is your tight end. Otherwise, you have good players in the wide receiver room and on the running back depth chart. Daniel Jones is squarely kind of in that lower middle class of quarterbacks, at least based on the data we have, with upside if the system was the reason he was down in the 20s. And the system looks good, frankly. Mike Kafka coming in from Kansas City, combined with Brian Dable and what he did in Buffalo, looks on paper like a marriage made in heaven. And I think I will be more surprised if this offense finishes in the low 20s, excuse me, high 20s. Right now, they're powering 27th best offense. I think
Yeah,
I said that.
I have this team.
That's
I have
way
it's
too
like a
high.
league average offense.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I think
with upside.
realistically, with
Like
upside,
I have
you're
this
right,
team
right.
as like a
Yeah.
I have this team as like a -1.
Yeah. We agree. Yeah, I'm strongly agree with that. So I think they'll score some points. I think they'll win some games based on scoring some points. I think they'll surprise some teams who are kind of in that middle class in the NFL. And I think there are some games where they're going to have to score a shit ton of points because they're up against an explosive offense that is really putting some pressure on them. And with that, let's look at their schedule and try to identify some of those spots.
Yeah. So right off the bat, like you said, there's a the 6.5 point spread. But
yeah,
it's maybe a team maybe I'm not as high on as the market, spoiler alert, in Tennessee. And I think they could get, squarely in a openers are weird like that. And then, I mean, they have a lot of coin flips.
Let me ask you specifically. A lot of coin flips
on the schedule, man.
So let's say it out loud. Giants are at Tennessee. They're 6.5 point dogs week 1. Is Tennessee the type of team that scares you from an explosive standpoint offensively? No.
A couple years ago, yeah. But no.
Surely not without A.J. Brown.
No, certainly. Not without A.J. Brown, and maybe even, taking into account Arthur Smith not being there any longer. Like a couple years ago, I was a lot more worried. This is a team that has decided to build an identity around maybe running it a little too much, despite how good he is. And no, this is my God, I hope a bunch of people take them in Survivor. That's like a Survivor landmine. I'm going to get Tennessee out of the way because the Giants sucked last year. I'm not saying they're super live to win that, but that game does feel like one that could get away from Tennessee. And then look at all the games that are within a field goal in the schedule. Like that's where I do see this upside. Like if the offense is good, the defense just has to rely on, really look at it, rely on Carson Wentz or Drew Lock or second year Trevor Lawrence to not make some plays against them. Justin Fields with no weapons. Like if they can get some luck on their side from these other offenses not playing well enough and they score points, they're going to be like a 500 team. This is which kind of stinks for the rebuild if Daniel Jones is winning and you still don't think like he's the reason. But I do think that's where you don't want to end up in the purgatory where it's like Daniel Jones is not the answer, but they still won 9 games. Like, yeah. Now, if you want to keep him, you're tagging him for $30 million or you're trading a bunch of draft picks to get a high quarterback. That's kind of where I think this Giants team ends up, which isn't super fun for, backers of Big Blue, but you'll always have your medium sodas, I guess.
Your medium sodas and your
I'd forgotten about that part too.
Your memories of the Eli Manning era. The medium soda thing was.
You guys got Super Bowls. Don't complain. There's plenty of teams that don't. So, I don't know what sticks out to you as far as stretches.
Oh boy, let's see. Well, Carolina
advantage stretch early.
Carolina week 2 fits the mold of a team that might have a little bit more explosive firepower offensively with Mayfield and CMC and DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. Like that might be the first one where we're getting squirrely with an over, right? Like I'm happy to take the Giants. I'm going to end up betting this team a lot this year, I think, one way or the other in a lot of these games. Just because of sort of the fragility of the defense and because I'm higher on them than market by a lot offensively, I think this is going to be a team that's going to be a bet on and or an over and or an under, depending on who they're playing. I was going
to say team total overs on the road where they're probably not getting enough respect.
Yeah.
Like that Tennessee game, what's the total there? 47?
I don't think it's that high. No way it's that high. No way it's that high.
Fair.
Scrolling right now, it is 44.
Wow,
the week 1 total is 44.
You can tell we're still in preseason mode.
The week 2 total hosting Carolina. You want to guess what that is?
So, well, just quick 44.5, and then take off the 3.5. So their team total is under 20 in that.
Mark expecting them to score 18 and 3/4 points.
Yeah, that's
It's too low.
and
Yeah.
again, I'll have to base some things on what we see in the preseason. I think you're going to see the starters play a lot in preseason. Both of these teams coming up because they need reps. Daniel Jones, like he missed a bunch of time. A lot of these receivers missed time. We're going to see plenty of reps. So, yeah, it's a team that I'm betting on the case of. Again, I'm glad we came to this. We didn't really talk today. I was busy, you were busy,
Yeah.
but we both kind of landed on the same thing. Like this offense is probably underrated by the market,
Yes.
and the defense might stink, and it might be a fun over team.
Yeah. I tell you what, man, that week 2 total against Carolina, 42.5. 42.5 is not correct, in my opinion.
Carolina has good outside receivers. Like they can make things happen.
Yeah.
Baltimore, I
can
don't
throw
know
a
if
good deep ball.
Baltimore can be considered an explosive team if the receivers are catching the
A
ball.
little Wink Martindale revenge game.
That is a wink, yeah.
I don't know.
That'll be a fun one.
45.5.
It's probably a game I'm not betting, honestly. Those are weird.
And then you get a game like at Green Bay, which is in London, England.
Yeah, and they're an NFC team if we want to keep making bowl cases for this. So they get the 9 home games and then an away game that isn't really in Lambeau.
Game. You're right.
So the Man City will play more games in Lambeau this year than the Giants, who actually play the Packers.
Oh, how about that?
Odd. And Man City will play a bunch in London as well, I'm sure. But yeah, that is not a true road game. It's happening in London, so they have a semi-advantageous schedule. Like, yeah, Dallas, a good Dallas team beats the shit out of you. Green Bay, even on a neutral, probably beats the shit out of you if things work out there.
No, that's a lower scoring. Like those are the games that Green Bay is going to actually.
It depends on their.
Yeah, they're going to be like those are the
if
games
their receivers
where
click though.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
we just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, erase that entire podcast if the receivers click with Rodgers.
Yeah, we said some bad shit about them.
No, the part of the schedule that scares me is week 6, 7, 8 leading into the bye. Like if you have a little bit of success early, travel's in your advantage through there. The teams you're playing outside of Carolina don't have a ton of explosiveness offensively. People will argue Dallas is explosive offensively, but I'm not sure with their current roster if they are as explosive as people will think of in years past, particularly early in the season. Chicago is not explosive offensively. So really, if you can beat Carolina based on outscoring them there, have the ball last and win like a 30-27 type of game, you could be 3-1 or 4-0, and it wouldn't shock the world at all. But that next stretch where you play Green Bay in London is a tough one. And then you are just worn down travel-wise, hosting Baltimore, and then you got to go to Florida, and then you got to go to Seattle. That is a really, really rough back-to-back weeks of travel, just on the heels of flying to London. So they are going to get to their bye just in the nick of time in terms of
it feels like that. It feels like that Baltimore game could go horribly awry. Yeah. And then it might be one of those where, hey, like in tennis, Drew, where a guy is down a break. It's maybe, 4-3, the other guy's serving, and you can tell, like, oh, he's just going to play the third set instead. Like if I'm tired from coming back from Green Bay and I see Baltimore and then I see Jacksonville and Seattle on the horizon, I'm not saying you punt on that game, but boy, I'm looking at those other 2 games as like, we don't want this whole 3-game stretch to be a disaster. Maybe we just take our lumps, put together a game plan that we think can work, but really focus in on not screwing up the rest of this heading into our bye, come out strong, beat the Texans, beat Detroit. I don't know. So
I see surprising wins in the first half of our first quarter. I see some surprising losses in the second quarter. And then after the bye, it all entirely depends on how well they self-scouted. Because like this, again, they fit into that kind of mold where they go into the bye potentially on like maybe a couple of games where they were expected to do better and they didn't, and maybe they actually do self-scouting and adjustments and improve over that bye week. And they come out and they get a couple of winnable games against Houston and Detroit. before you have to host Dallas in what will be kind of sort of your true test on Thanksgiving Day in Jerry World. Although that hasn't scared anyone in recent years. People have been able
No,
to go to Dallas and hang a W in their visitors' locker room. Down the home stretch, a lot of games against the NFC East. Dallas, Washington, Philly, Washington, and then you end in Philly. Not a ton of advantages travel-wise, schedule-wise on your, to look at down the home stretch there, except for that Indy game where you're more rested and have better travel situations. So it's, this is probably one of those. I think this is good for the franchise. You're more entertaining than people expect. Number one, you're getting some wins early and getting some, the fans are into it come Thanksgiving when you play Dallas. Ultimately, you're probably not winning enough to make the playoffs or win the division, but so you're not stuck with Jones if you don't want him. But if you do want him, you can get him on a relatively team-friendly deal. Do you know what I mean? Like this whole
that's the
thing
thing
has
too.
a recipe of being relatively positive long term for the Giants, I think.
And if it doesn't, if you lose some close games, the moral, like the moral
Sure.
losses, like, oh, it was a loss, but it wasn't that bad, and you end up in that end stretch where you get Philly twice, an Indy team that I think is going to be good, a Minnesota team
Yep.
that, Justin Jefferson versus a rookie cornerback. We'll see how that goes. Like, there's a bunch of games that you could lose. Maybe
Terry
if you were
McLaurin, AJ Brown. Oh man,
trying to lose, but like, hey, let's maybe end this on a skid. The new coach isn't in danger of losing his job right away. Let's get a high draft spot and move on.
Yeah,
So
you end your schedule with CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, Justin Jefferson, Michael Pittman, and then AJ Brown
AJ
again.
Brown.
There's going to be people are going to be putting some serious pressure on you scoreboard wise down the home stretch. Yeah, that's not going to feel great.
Let's take a look at those odds. What do we got? Because a couple people have mentioned this. I know a couple Fridays ago, Cleve in his preview, he talks about betting them to win the division at a decent price. If you shop around, you can get some 8s, maybe some 9s still. Hunt around. Like, obviously Super Bowl and NFC aren't bets I would recommend, but if Dallas has the injury bug or just doesn't work out after having to jettison some wide receivers, like they had too many good wide receivers that they found and they couldn't keep them all. If the offense takes a step back and maybe the Eagles aren't the darling that everyone's making them out to be, this is a team that might be in it. If you can get a big number on to win the division, sure, I get it. But other than that, I'm pretty Giants agnostic in the offseason as far as betting on any of these. I will bet them during the season. I don't think I like any of the futures.
Yeah, keep our powder
Certainly
dry.
not paying a heavy price for the under.
Let's keep our powder dry. Daniel Jones is not an MVP candidate, even if the Giants surprise to the upside like we're talking about. If the Giants steal a wild card, that will be pretty amazing for them, but plus 225 is not fair for them to do that by my numbers. To win the ace 7-1 is not a plus EV bet by my numbers. I have them closer to 9-1.
Using Saquon in the right way and getting him heavily involved in the passing game, there's a case for comeback player.
Well, that's
but
interesting
he's
call.
He's chalky as shit. Like he's one of the. I think he's one of the lower prices too.
He's been comeback player of the year a couple years in a row, I feel like.
Yeah, well, he's had a lot of injuries, so yeah, I'm not interested in any of that.
I guess here's the thing. It was fun to be right about Saquon being a bad selection at number 2 overall.
Yeah,
I'm over it now. That's a win. Whatever happens at this point, it's still a win.
He's still a talented player.
Yeah.
If he's used properly,
he
can still make a big difference.
I'll pull for him to surprise to the good this year, and that's certainly possible in a system that's going to be more, more current in terms of philosophical approach. So it could happen. Betting plan of attack, I think we kind of covered that in a roundabout way, but I am probably going to end up taking the points with these guys week 1. I like their matchup against Tennessee. I love that over 42.5 week 2. And then from there, you just need to be conscientious about which weeks you really get excited about these guys. Because again, if it's up against a team that has explosivity in their DNA, then the Giants are going to need to have the ball last and win a 33-30 kind of a shootout. And that's not always going to be the case.
Someone in the chat says, "You guys not absolutely dumping on the Giants makes me happy." Couldn't do it. Like, I mean, we dumped on the secondary. We dumped on,
It's easy not to, because
well,
I
if
think
we
they
could
got
dump on
their
them.
I think they got their offseason as right as they possibly could, considering the situation they were
Yeah, they
in.
were in a tight spot. Like,
And
cap-wise, they were in a terrible spot.
They got a good general manager. They got a good although their general manager is a liar. He went out of his way to really obscure what people understood about their draft board. In the end, I think we agree that they got a top-tier pass rusher in Thibodeau and a top-tier offensive lineman in Evan Neal. And it is not out of the realm of possibility, Andy, that we wake up in 3 years and we look at the best offensive and best defensive players from this draft are both on the Giants. That's not crazy.
Yeah, those guys are, I mean, high-end guys who played in high-end systems, and if they work out, like, kudos, you nailed it. Both New York teams have a very good opportunity to have holy shit, you drafted those guys in the same class? Yeah, well, we were terrible for years. And to be fair, the Jets did a great job of trading. So, all right, the Giants.
The G-men are not going to surprise us this year, I don't think.
No.
It'd be fun to back them when we back them, though. And anytime, any team with this much fan power, fan horsepower, getting a bunch of primetime games, like, this is what I want from them. Make those games interesting and fun, not like the last couple of years where every Giants game in primetime felt like freaking homework. It was awful. It was the worst. All right. Shall we? Yeah. Let's put a bow on it. Thank you, Dan.
All right. We're moving on in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the deep dive. This one's going to be a weird one. Again, we did not do a ton of crosstalk where we prepped each other for opinions about today's teams. So I have no idea where in the pantheon of takes you are for the Washington Commanders.
The Commanders.
I can tell you one thing about Washington, and I don't think this team really gets the new name karma bump here, the rebrand karma bump. They did it kicking and screaming. And ultimately, I liked the football team as far as a brand.
I kind of fell in love with the football team. Like, it was so ridiculous. It worked.
Yeah. And let's make 0.0 mistakes. The Commanders are not ever a bet on team, are not ever a buy team, because they are exceptionally poorly run. The fish routes from the head. Dan is the worst. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's the worst owner in professional sports right now. I mean, he's not at like Donald Sterling levels, but he's knocking on the damn door.
Yeah, he's getting there, man. There's been a lot of like, oh shit, he paid off, some female employees that he probably harassed, and so the teams do a revenue share thing where everybody says, here's how much money we made this year, and they share parts of those revenue, and he probably lied to try to take extra.
Is any of this probably? I thought this was all covered.
No,
in
I mean,
great detail in
it's
congressional
still under
hearings where you get.
I don't want him to sue us. So I will say it's alleged for the time being. But I mean, it's Daniel Snyder. He probably fucking did it. So this is a team that we might be. I mean, I can see the schedule already. Dan has it up on a different slide. Might be a team you use the other team against in Survivor League. I never remember to mention it on the first pod of the day, but we are brought to you by the Circa Millionaire and Survivor contest. Both break free, $12 million in the pot. And yeah, you just You just pick against Washington every week. That's how you win. I am bound and determined to actually do well in Survivor this year. So Drew and I will be out in Vegas in a couple weeks signing up for that. Somebody hit us in the DMs, had some questions about proxies and stuff. I think we probably should take like 10 minutes at some point, maybe during that podcast, or maybe we'll do a bonus one, kind of help people out with that if they're not unfamiliar, get people to figure out how that works, because it's not that complicated once you've done it once. It's pretty easy to get a proxy figured out for you. So, yeah, check those out. You can enter in Vegas and then play from anywhere. Enjoy that. And like I said, we'll be entering here soon, and we'll not be using Washington. Ooh, that's a sneaky look. Washington has Jacksonville week 1. Nope. That's still not a Survivor pick. 2021 for your Washington. So it was the football team at that point. It still was. Kind of mirrored New York that we just talked about a little. Like there were plenty of injuries, maybe not at the same spots. Underwhelmed greatly. There was, they won some games. They won a couple games against decent teams. So the win at home against Tampa was off the bye, though. So, I mean, take that with a grain of salt. But the teams they beat were the Giants twice, the Atlanta Falcons. They gave up 30 to the Falcons and still beat them. They beat the Panthers. They beat the Seahawks in the spot in November. I'm guessing at that point Russ was out or injured. And they beat the Raiders, who were just an odd up and down team. So the wins were nothing super impressive, and some of the losses were pretty bad. They got beat pretty bad at home by the Chiefs. They gave up 33 to a Saints team, 43 to the Bills. They lost to a Broncos team that I wasn't super high on, and they had a pretty bad losing streak in division, which was a weird part of the schedule. If you remember last year, they went Dallas, Philly, in 4 weeks. Lost all 4. Lost all of those. Dallas dropped 56 on their ass.
That one was
the day after Christmas. I remember that.
That was in prime time. That was amazingly not competitive. Like over by the end of the first quarter.
Yeah, and the Giants jumping on the field. Remember that at the end of that game where the Giants. I mean,
talking about the week 2 win. The week 2 win was fraudulent. Yeah. God, man. 2021. Here's what I remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct the record if I'm wrong. 2021, the Washington football team were viewed as a sneaky sleeper to win the Super Bowl. People reacted.
Bets on Fitzpatrick to win the MVP.
People reacted to 2020, where the defense caught everyone by surprise, and they said, "Ain't gonna get fooled again. This is a good team with a great defense that could win a Super Bowl now that they have their quarterback situation figured out with Fitzpatrick." Bet on. And they got bet. Week 1, they were bet from like a pick'em to a small favorite against the Chargers, I believe. Week 2 at Thursday Night Football, they were heavily bet from like pick'em out to like 3-ish, or for not pick'em to 3, but there was like under 3 to 3 or over, if I remember correctly. But they were bet on first 3 weeks of the season, no return. People finally stopped betting them. They go into Atlanta and they got that fluky win because of the call at the end of the game. Like that, Atlanta absolutely should have won that game. If you go back and look, there was some weird refereeing at the end that handed that one to the Washington football team. And then they proceeded to lose 4 straight in convincing loss fashion. Season looks over. Taylor Heineke somehow turns it around and beats the likes of Tom Brady and Russell Wilson in 3 weeks stretch. And as of those 2 back-to-back wins, which were also weirdly both 17-15. 2 weeks in a row, they won the game 17-15. After those 2 wins,
score.
The Washington football team was 6-6, and everyone who had bet on them preseason and who had given up hope was all of a sudden like, "Whoa, 5 division games left, 6-6. We're in the mix." And then they went right into the wood chipper down the stretch.
Like Steve Buscemi.
And both Dallas and Philly. By the way, those 4 wins for Dallas and Philly combined, that put those teams in the playoffs.
Yep.
Philly was not going to the playoffs until they beat you twice. Dallas was not for sure clinching the NFC East until they beat you twice. So that was pretty wild. They end up with 7 wins, one under their Pythag expectation. But I got to tell you, a 7-win team feels exactly right for this Taylor Heineke-led squad. That, they have a decent coach as far as a leader of men goes in Ron Rivera. But then what in the world is going on with Ron Rivera keeping Jack Del Rio around as the D coordinator?
Some of the reasons, and you already elaborated, some of the reasons that people got behind this team to play well in 2021 were, hey, this young pass rush is very good. Well, Montez Sweat and our guy
Chase
Young missed a bunch of time. So
Yep.
you throw one out the window. Hey, we've got a veteran quarterback, and I know he's never won anything real big, but like he's been able to take command of the offense. We have a good coach and a veteran quarterback coming in instead of the garbage that we've put out there under center for a while. He gets hurt right away, and then immediately you run out of things like that. So I guess I'm kind of surprised they won as many games as they did. And to be fair, again, some of them were goofy at the end. This was a team I bet a regular season win total under, and I felt cheated in a couple of these games. I was happy with that losing streak at the end, but yeah, there were some goofy games this team, and
they made their under with and they made their alt under.
Yeah, no, but when they were 6-6, I was thinking about it because I didn't hold Philly in the highest of regards at some points. I'm like, man, they could sneak out a couple more wins. I don't need this stuff. And yeah, it turned out to be a pretty tough schedule, like Sam's saying in the chat. I had that noted. It's like it was slated to be a tough schedule, but it turned out to be
that was one of the reasons we were cold on them last year.
Yeah, it turned out to be even tougher than expected, as some of the teams they played were more surprising. And then also the injuries didn't help. So underperformed. And a lot of these things that we're saying, like, hey, this team had a shitty quarterback situation and their star players were hurt and they played a tough schedule. These are all reasons, as I'm putting a bow in 2021, to say, hey, this is a team that we're going to back next year because they're not going to play a tough schedule and they don't have a quarterback that's injured, but my Lord, they just didn't do much. Like,
no, it's worse than that. No, it's worse.
They might have gone backwards at quarterback.
It's name I guess Drew Lock maybe is the only other guy in the conversation, but like name another quarterback move that would give you less enthusiasm about this team turning it around.
I would have rather seen Kyle Slaughter. Heineke, and yes, it is a bit hyperbolic. Like Heineke was not good, but it's not this. Like, why not go find someone young? And I guess it's like, hey, this is probably Wentz's last shot if he's hurt again, or if he just plays ineffectively. But my big knock on Wentz was last year he played behind a much better offensive line than he will with a smarter head coach. I have a lot of respect for Ron Rivera, but I think Frank Reich is a better game planner. I think they have probably a better offensive game plan. And yes, there's some good receivers here, but it doesn't matter when you make some decisions like he did. Like Wentz is bad, and he's going to get put in a worse situation, but some people are expecting him to play better. Like it's just there's like a theorem, like I got to go back to geometry, like transitive or additive. I'm not sure what we're doing here. You get to the end, but like, oh no, that doesn't apply here. He probably doesn't play better. And yes, he could surprise me being a little healthier, but some of I'm just remembering him like trying to throw the ball out of his own end zone right to a guy, and like some of the bad decisions he made, again, behind a maybe at times all world, some of these players on this line with a good offensive game plan, great running backs to support him. And again, it wasn't super high-end receivers at times. They had some problems with that, but good enough receivers. Like if he didn't succeed in Indy, I'm not sure how he succeeds here. So, I mean, it's not like some hot take to say I'm out on Carson Wentz, but this isn't some step forward. that they need to take, because they do have some good young receivers. They do have, some pieces on this roster that can work out, and then they just do this Wentz thing, and it really makes me sad for this team, because there are parts of this team, especially on the defensive side, that I think could play well.
Well, yeah, I mean that. Yeah, I think you did a fair job of covering all of that. Offensive line downgrade from last year, losing Scherf. Jamil Douglas was a good player too. So you're downgrading the interior of your offensive line, which means pass rush coming up the middle is going to continue to bring the worst out of Wentz. So if you're going up against a team with elite interior pass rush, you can circle that game as a game where Wentz is going to have at least 2 boneheaded plays that take points off the board for you. Wentz had a weird year last year because statistically it doesn't look as bad on paper as it actually was. Anyone who watched any Colts or bet on any Colts or had any kind of stake or interest in the Colts doing well will attest to the Wentz experience being horrific last year, and having just some moments of games where you're like, we should win this game comfortably if Wentz does not do that absolute boneheaded thing that killed us and took away the win. And so for those reasons, I can't get anything down positively about this Washington team at all, even though, yeah, you mentioned it. The skill position players are an upgrade over last year, and they were good last year. The defense is an upgrade over last year because they got a bunch of young, healthy bodies back. I think in general, I will give Scott Turner credit as an offensive coordinator for creating some things that are different than the rest of the league and that are positives. And so I think, it was there for this division. This team was primed to be the surprise in the East if they had made the quarterback decision correctly. And Wentz, for whatever it's worth, may end up being that guy for them this year, but I'm not going to be part of it. I will happily just watch.
And part of it too was, and we led the show off with it. Like, I get it. If you were traded for, you don't have a ton of options. If you're a free agent, even seeing like, oh man, they got some decent, they got some decent pieces here, and I'm a quarterback who could move. In what world are you saying, like, I would like to play for Daniel Snyder on that field, on that turf at my age? Because like, it just doesn't seem like a really good spot. And maybe that I'm trying to like justify what they did. Like,
well, you know what they should have done.
How do you go out and court a free agent? Like, you have to.
You get you give Minnesota fair value and trade for Kirk Cousins.
That would have been funny as fuck to watch him go back.
But like honestly, like Kirk Cousins as the QB instead of Carson Wentz on this team that's a dark horse in this NFC East, in my opinion, for sure.
Yeah,
like these wide receivers are.
You're right. I mean, it is a team who is a quarterback away.
McLaurin
competing.
McLaurin, bona fide wide receiver one, bona fide game breaker, no doubt. Dotson, Samuel, solid 2 and 3. Diami Brown, solid. As off.
I was going to say, I'm not so sold on Diami on down. Like, they do lack the depth. That's another maybe knock on them. Like, they have a solid 1, 2, 3, but after that, if there's injuries again, it could get rough again with Wentz. So I like what they're putting out there, but if they have injuries again, they're a little fragile, especially
Gibson,
the offensive
McKissick
line.
is good. The offensive line scares me big time.
Well, yeah, and especially if there are injuries, they lack depth a lot there as well. So
yeah,
it's a tough team. And you know what, too? Like, just the game plan. Turner isn't horrid. And I understand that you had Taylor Heineke for chunks of the year and you had receivers missing, and maybe this was what forced you to do this, but they ran the ball an awful lot. And I don't know, maybe it's like, hey, guess what? Our receivers are back. We're not going to do that. But last year they ran the ball an awful lot. It wasn't good. So, and like you said, if Wentz was bad from a clean pocket, let's see how he does from a messy one.
Okay. Another team that is going to struggle to contain the explosive plays. The cornerback position here is painfully thin. Jackson was not a good free agency signing 2 years ago. Kendall Fuller jury's out on him this year. Your safeties are below league average from what I can tell you. Curl and McCain, I don't think either of those guys moves the needle. Your big round one
So
draft
the
choice last
secondary
year
will be
was
worse than New York.
It will be worse.
I really think so. They didn't.
I think it will be
didn't, like,
too.
they didn't do a lot. It was bad last year. I had it ranked like bottom 3, and I mean, look at what they did to address that. It really wasn't much of
They lost their
anything.
one guy that I thought could play in Landon Collins.
Yeah, so like the secondary I have is, and again, there's not a lot of floor to hit when you're already staring at it, but they were a bad secondary that will be a bad secondary again. There's a lot of, parallels to this New York team where it's like, hey man, this pass rush could be good because we've actually seen this pass rush be good if they're healthy.
Sure,
But
of course.
but the secondary, like you're saying, it will probably stink a lot.
But even that, the strength, the easy reason that Chase Young was an easy rookie of the year bet a couple of years ago, the reason that it was easy to point to that Washington team and be like they're going to surprise to the upside defensively was because they had the secret, the San Francisco recipe, which was wave after wave, lots and lots of round one guys in that front seven, and slowly but surely there's been attrition, right? You're down a bunch of these guys that used to be your depth. Even though they may not move the needle in the vacuum. Matt Ioannidis gone. You're down to Chase Young and Deron Payne, realistically, on that offensive line. Montez Sweat, I presume, comes back at some point, right?
Yeah.
But it's still a real lean crew relative to what you had in years past, I think.
It's one way to put it. And yeah, I don't have them. I don't have them finishing ahead of New York. Like we did this in the order that the odds say, and that's fine. But it's a little worrying. Again, we will mention it and we'll get to the schedule when we get to it. But it is the same kind of thing as we saw with New York. Like they are going to play the AFC South. They are going to play the NFC North, where you get Chicago, and maybe if Detroit isn't as good as they'd hoped. The Cleveland game is late. Presumably they get Cleveland with a quarterback, but it's going to be an easier half of the schedule, or it's above average. I'm not trying to say that. Like, I don't think it's on the wrong side of the median schedule. Like this will be classified at the end of the year when we look back at it as this was an easier schedule despite how they play. So we'll find out. And again, it depends how good Dallas and Philly are. There's almost a quarter of your schedule right there. And we saw that go horribly awry for a team like this as recently as last year. But I think this pass rush can really, that's where I wrote bounce back time. Like I think the pass rush can play as well as we saw 2 years ago if they're healthy.
So they have your 2017 number one pick, Jonathan Allen, your 18 number one pick, Deron Payne, your 19 number one pick, Montez Sweat, your 20 number one pick, Chase Young, and your 21 number one pick, Jamin Davis, who, for whatever it's worth, was a whiff last year.
He might be playing the wrong position. They moved him around a little, like he was a disappointment, but yeah, Sweat. I mean, most of those guys, it's been like good. And Chase Young, sure shit better have worked out. Used heavy draft capital on that, but I think the pass rush will be fine. But it might be another case of, oh no, they can't cover anybody. And again, here's AJ Brown twice a year. Here's the Dallas receivers. Here's Pittman. Here's Jefferson. Here's Brandon Cooks is coming to town. Like these are still number one guys that when you have a bottom 3 secondary, it doesn't matter how shitty the other team is. If they have a high end receiver, he's going to smoke somebody.
Yeah, I'm almost even more worried about them going up against teams that just have solid pass blocking. Like it doesn't even you don't even need to be up against elite wideouts with this team. You just need to kind of be up against solid pass rush, right? Because they're not doing anything like totally unpredictable. to generate pressure. They're literally just lining up with more talented guys, 1v1. Like that's the concept. And so I think realistically,
Yeah, I talked about that. It's not, I said a team that just gets rid of the ball quick. That's not the only way to scheme around a good pass rush. There's ways to bring in your sixth lineman. There's ways to chip block with good pass blocking receivers. I mean, there's teams that are just, hey, they scheme well for a good pass rush, and maybe they have middle of the road receivers and an average quarterback. But if they pass block good, you're gonna be, you have frustrated stars.
Yeah, you're going to have a fun little swing here. If we look at the schedule, you're going to have a fun little swing week 5 through week 8 where you're up against teams that don't have the best in terms of pass protection in Tennessee and Chicago. And then you turn right around and you play Green Bay and Indy, who have super disciplined defenses and outstanding pass protection. So it's like your defense should work to keep you in that game against Tennessee and Chicago, and it's not going to do a lick of help against Green Bay and Indy, which is going to be a funny dichotomy if Washington can get a couple of wins early in the season, beat Tennessee and Chicago. I mean, honestly, like the way that this Washington team is rostered feels like they are geared to just absolutely just make Justin Fields' day utterly miserable.
I was looking at that.
Utterly miserable.
Justin Fields, oh no, we beat him on an outside, the outside shoulder throw to the boundary. Nope, he didn't have enough time. But I mean, what the team you were describing was and Indy too, maybe even to a greater effect, but Green Bay with a smart coach and incredibly smart and experienced quarterback, less than stellar receiving core, but good pass blocking. Like again, you could throw 5 bums out there at receiver at that point. If no one's getting home, you just what's the they need a term for that. The opposite of a coverage sack, like when Rodgers just has 15 seconds back there and he throws it to the third tight end who's wide open for like 16 yards across the middle because the pass rush just isn't getting there.
Yeah,
just
the pass pro win. A pass pro win.
That is pass pro wins are the most frustrating thing to watch when you're against a team like that, where a quarterback just has all day long. It's just very frustrating, and you might have a couple weeks of frustration like that before you get to go play Minnesota.
Yeah. There's not a lot of teams on their schedule, even as generally soft as it is. There's not a lot of teams that I would qualify as having bad offensive lines. In fact, there's a bunch that have pretty good offensive lines. Detroit, Philly, good. Green Bay, Indy, good. Philly
Dallas.
Again, good. Dallas, I think, is going to be good, but not
be above
really
average.
Sure. Yeah. Giants, good. And then Cleveland, good. So you're going up against top half of the league offensive lines a lot, which I think is going to expose this defense to where they're coming in a little worse than expected. Right now, the market thinks they are. You want to guess?
On offense?
You might know.
Or on defense?
Washington's offense is what?
25th?
22nd, so a little better than your guess. Their defense is
18th, 20th,
19th.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. Both.
I'm probably a little lower on both of those. And
I think if you're going to find an edge, it's going to be situationally here. It's not going to be broadly, right?
No. Again, so much of NFL betting does become sum of the parts, and it stinks to see player like all pros. Essentially, Chase Young is an all pro at his ceiling, and Terry McLaurin probably too. It sucks to see that the sum of the parts isn't good enough to get the most out of those guys, most likely. Especially when you are going to, what takes away Chase Young and the rest of that young pass rush, all these good offensive lines, and then what takes away Terry McLaurin, Carson Wentz. So there's too many stoppers. All your positives have a negative staring them right in the face to take it away. And then even with an easy schedule, one of their main strengths, like we keep saying, in the pass rush, is neutralized all too often by all these good, pass pro teams. There are still wins. Like you play Houston, you play Atlanta, you play the Giants a couple times. Like there's going to be bright spots for this team, but I'm thinking the team total or the regular season win total is fair to slightly a little high. I know they have some advantageous spots, and really the only really bad one is that trip out to the Niners on a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Cross country after playing a division team at home and then going out and playing the Niners on Christmas Eve. That'll be fun for them.
You know what else? What's good though that precedes that is the Giants bye sandwich.
Yeah.
Because you know why? Because the Giants got to play Philly while you get to rest up before you play them again.
I can live with that.
Those are kind of funny, weird.
You could, and again, I said nice things about the Giants and fewer nice things about Washington, but there's a chance that Washington gets 2 wins there because it's not a bad spot for them.
Absolutely, there is. You're absolutely right. Chance they build a little late season momentum there with Houston, Atlanta, Giants by Giants. That little 4-game stretch right there. If you're surprising at all through the first 10 weeks of this season, I think you're staring at your month of November, December and thinking, we're not out of this. I mean, certainly there's no Widowmakers really staring down the stretch. Like a 6-game deficit on the road, a 6-point deficit on the road at San Francisco doesn't really spook you. Closing with Dallas doesn't really spook you. Cleveland, that's not going to be an easy game, but they're not like the death blow. So I think realistically you probably have hope if you're a fan and you're coming through this Thanksgiving stretch, assuming you're not 1-9, right? So what are the chances you are 1-9? What are the chances your only win is against Chicago?
There's a non-zero chance that you lose. Like all those other games are losable. Detroit's decent. Philly's, if Detroit and Philly live up to the hype, maybe Jacksonville, Chicago. I don't like 2-8. It's definitely on the table for that stretch. I think that would be.
I think it is too.
It would hard to be hopeful after that. But again, there are wins. If things hash out right and Wentz isn't losing them games.
Well, let's pretend that.
What's your best case scenario there? 4-6.
My best case scenario for this franchise is that Daniel Snyder steps down. My second best case scenario for this franchise is that they are 2-7 going into that Monday Night Football game where Carson Wentz goes back to Philly. He gets booed to the tune of crying on the field and takes his shoes off, Richie Tannenbaum style.
Like the bomber.
It's a brutal loss to Philly. You're 2-8, and then you pull Wentz, and it's time for Sam Howell. And Sam Howell has
been calling for Howell.
Sam Howell has a nice little opportunity to swoop in after Wentz embarrasses himself at Philly, and he gets to play Houston, Atlanta, Giants, and maybe you leave thinking we might have something here. I don't think Ron Rivera is a very realistic likelihood to lose his job, even if he has a very underwhelming season. I think all of the heat and everything right now is zeroed in on that owner and what's going on with the other owners and potentially forcing him out. And I think the Snyder realistically can't risk the bad the bad press that comes along with moving on from Rivera or moving on from his GM or president of football operations, all guys he hired to show, hey, look how not dysfunctional we are. So those guys are all safe in my mind, even if it's going sideways. And if it goes sideways, it's because the quarterback is a sloppy mess and because the secondary does not have any talented players.
Yeah, right? here's how you build goodwill. And I mean, it's a gamble because it doesn't always work. Howell could suck shit, but you put Howell in after a bad game at Philly, and he wins like 3 out of 4 of those, or God, all 4. Like, how pumped is the fan base? You're selling season tickets with Sam
Oh yeah.
Howell's picture on it for next year.
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
That's definitely how that works. I mean,
There's
and
there's a legitimate chance in my mind that Sam Howell ends up going into the 2023 campaign where we're saying he's the best quarterback of that draft.
yeah, I'm so bad at valuing young rookie quarterbacks that I just will say he could be the best. He could be the worst player ever to play in the league. That's the range of outcomes I have for him right now. But yeah,
Okay.
that'd be a fun one for the team to build off of. Hey, he comes in, he beats some bad teams. You give him a pass because the Niners was such a tough spot. Cleveland's a playoff team, and then maybe he gets a sneaky win because Dallas doesn't need the game in 17 or 18, and he ends up going like 5-2 down the stretch. You can sell some season tickets off that.
I think that works. I'll sign up
works.
for that. I'm down with that. Let's look at the odds. Anything else worth betting? Probably not.
Again,
I think we're kind of at market is right on these guys. More or less.
It's a really juicy under. It's probably about right. No chance. No chance I'm taking them to win the NFC East. It's a lesser price than the Giants, and I think their ceiling's slightly lower.
I will tell you this. If you are buying them at all, you might as well swing for the East.
Yeah, I wouldn't make playoffs. Like, if they're good, they're good. It's just, the secondary gelled a little. The
pass rush is so great that it doesn't matter, like San Francisco back in the day.
Yeah, you'd have to have like the pass rush comes together so well, and the secondary is playing like the 20th best secondary in the league, and that's pretty impressive for them. And Wentz isn't giving games away. And again, the schedule has got enough coin flips on it that everything comes together right. And the Eagles, the Eagles and Cowboys would have to play a little worse than this. Still not like, oh my God, they won 13 games with Carson Wentz. So we'll clip that if that happens. But my goodness,
man.
Just swing for it, I guess. Swing for the NFC then.
I can't even tell you how delighted we would be in the month of January if we got an opportunity to bet against Carson Wentz in the playoff game. Can't even tell you.
I would probably take that bet. I would.
Yeah, I think I'll pull for them. I hope they make the playoffs, and I hope. But no, in reality, I think I'd like to see Wentz, and I mean, I'd like to see Howell with this young, with an okay offensive line, and this very, very, at least I think pretty clearly top half skill position player group. Would love to see them bring a young quarterback in and give him a shot. A young quarterback who has more talent than Heineke. But I don't think there's a good bet to be made on the Washington Commanders.
Nothing preseason, but I will look at them like we talked about a little. If there's a team where their strength really lines up, like the Bears, maybe it's a bet on spot. If they're teams where their strength is absolutely going to be stymied, neutralized, stopped in its tracks, and killed, like the Packers and Colts. Again, depending on where the numbers are at that point, those are spots while I will look to fade this team because everything they've possibly done right that people have talked about at all are just going to completely grind to a halt against a good pass protection team with a smart quarterback. You have 2 savvy old vets there. They've been to some Super Bowls, guys.
I forgot to even ask you about this when the schedule was up, but what do you make of that week 3 line that right now is a pick'em where Washington is hosting Philly?
That and the Minnesota number feel, I don't know. Is it
like we're not going to actually see those be a pick'em?
Like, what are we giving them for home field? Do they get an extra player this year?
They only get 1.8 points for home field advantage by the market.
Yeah, I'm off on them, and I'm higher than the market on Minnesota right now, I guess, especially offensively. So I don't like either of those, and I don't know if we'll see those. So probably 2-point dogs in both those.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, are you scared laying the chalk with Philly on the road against Washington if it's under a field goal? Not really, right?
No.
Same with Minnesota. Might have a couple bets against the
Yeah. Got some stuff lined up.
commies. Might have a couple bets
We're
against the
going to
commies.
call them the
here.
commies.
I like that.
We should.
I mean, it's
I
funny.
kind of like that too. I had Dan gaslit to he couldn't remember what the actual team name was because I've said Commandos so much.
The Commandos.
You'd have
The
to
Commandos
stop
is
me.
funnier than the Commanders. Yeah.
Commandos
Commandos is
would've been
funny.
cool.
Commies is funny.
Commanders sucks as a team name.
Yeah.
What stadium was it that it fell apart? Like the Eagles? Was that the Eagles game?
That was no what? Yeah, it was.
But it was the
almost
Eagles
Jalen
were
Hurts with the
visiting.
stanchion when the barricade broke and fans all fell into the tunnel.
Mm.
It was against the Eagles. They tried to take out Jalen Hurts that way. All right. Well, best of luck, Washington. And I really actually mostly just hope for you and your fans that they resolve the ownership situation.
Yeah.
And that we can move on. Yeah,
hopefully they got some zip ties on that railing, and we see some Sam Howell. Like
who's got zip ties on him at all times in case there's an opportunity to go raid the Capitol is Mr. Jack Del Rio.
Mr. Jack Del Rio. Yeah, that was without getting into politics. Like, if you're a public-facing person like that, maybe just don't need to comment.
You think that has any impact on how the players play for this team defensively, or they're just like, hey, we're pros, we don't really care what his beliefs are.
Hopefully they're just pros, but they can't love that. Like the fact that that I'm sure I don't know what everyone's political agenda is inside the locker room, but I'm sure there's plenty of people who are not impressed with him calling that a dust up, and maybe they don't enjoy listen to him. Maybe I don't know, maybe a lot of people are just, I don't know, politically agnostic. Yeah, Wentz probably tends to agree with that. Just
another guy that I don't think really has the locker room at all anywhere he's ever been. I don't think Wentz is especially well loved.
Since he was up in the
lot of players kind of, a lot of personalities involved with the commies that are tough to cheer for. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. All right, we wash our hands of the Commodores, the Commandos, the commies, and the betting plan of attack is just like a lot of teams. We're looking for spots where they're gonna anything this shitty team could possibly do right is neutralized. Like that.
Yeah, and if you're in Circus Survivor, do not take Washington week 1 versus the Jaguars.
Don't get too cute with it.
That looks like a bad spot to get involved with the Washington with
Especially
Commanders.
Some people are in love with Jacksonville. That might be a spot where some people take Jacksonville. It'll be interesting. See who takes who. Week 1 is always a spoiler.
You want a spoiler?
I do.
I played some Jaguars to win the Super Bowl and to win the AFC.
I mean, it's
the prices were ridiculous. It's like 155 to 1. And we are like 6 months removed from a year 2 QB taking his team to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying it's going to work out.
2 years in a row you've gotten involved with them.
The Jaguars?
Yeah.
Yeah, 50 to 1 was a nice payoff last year. I'll tell you that much.
No, I mean, you took
much rather have 150 to 1. Oh, I did, yeah, but I got a huge amount of equity and I never had a chance. This one,
no, it was a good. You had like 12 to 1. It was a good fucking number. So
155 to 1. I just can't get close to that for this team. They have the number 1 QB. Well, we'll save it for another day.
Yeah, we'll talk Jags different days.
151 is not the right price.
We'll be back Wednesday. We'll talk some America's team and the team that booed Santa Claus. Close up the NFC East podcast series. So check you back on the YouTube channel. If you made it an hour and 35 minutes, hit the thumbs up. If you're listening to this in a podcast, rate, review, subscribe. We've gotten a bunch of reviews. A bunch of people I don't know. Hopefully they were good ones. I didn't read any of them. I'm too heartbroken. If anyone has anything bad to say, I can never read them. But looks like we have some more reviews, and the stars are doing good.
Great.
Good.
Thank
Good
you,
for
guys.
us. So we'll catch you guys Wednesday.
Thank you.
I'll take you there. Oh!
Yeah, I just